It's such an interesting looking thing, and that's so refreshing for a hot hatch coupe thing.
Now, mechanically speaking, the connection to Ford here is what gives them a pretty dodgy reputation for reliability. But when you go doing the research, you might be pleasantly surprised.
5-cylinder engines, they just sound fantastic. You know what? I really wanted this car to do well in this review video because it just ticks so many boxes. It's a Volvo, so that makes it inherently cool. The styling is so unique because is it a hatchback? Is it a coupe? Who knows? And in this T5R design spec, it is a genuine hot hatch thanks to its turbocharged 5-cylinder engine. There's just so much to love about a C30. The problem is, it's an aging Volvo, and that means potentially there's also so much to hate about it as well. But don't fret, because we're going to be taking you through so much with this funky Volvo, starting with what goes wrong with it. How about we kick off with the exterior? Now, if the C30 you're looking at has a sunroof fitted, this is critical. Check it for any signs of water leaks. First of all, the drainage channels can block pretty easily, but the real problem is the little drainage tubes that sort of come off the bottom of the drainage channels, they can perish and fall apart. They can even break when you're trying to clean them. Now, the good news here is it's a really cheap and easy fix. You're looking at maybe $5, and to find out how to do it, there are plenty of great tutorials on the owners groups and forums. Actually, just on them, a massive thank you to all of you that helped us research this video, especially everybody on the Volvo C30 Australia's owners group, and to Jay Walter, you bloody legends. Now, another thing on water leaks, make sure you check along the top of the windscreen, because apparently, according to the owners, after years of vibrations, the seal can break down and water can leak in through there. Now, these water leakage issues can be a complete nightmare, but we'll delve into more details of that when we get inside. Next up, plenty of owners of the pre-update and lower spec C30s have complained that the standard non-xenon headlights are so bad they're almost verging on being dangerous. The good news here is that you can buy aftermarket globes and update kits to fix the lighting of the road ahead. Also, a couple of owners mentioned that some of the exterior plastics can get a bit brittle with age. In fact, one owner mentioned that the tailgate handle can break and even snap off if your 10-year-old son happens to reef at it with way too much enthusiasm. Now, this next one seems to impact C30s that are in climates like Australia, but if the car is left outside all of the time and maybe has missed a polish or two, the car's prominent hits, the paint here, can get a bit sunburnt. Now, the next big issue that plenty of owners have complained about, and you know what, I feel like I'm suffering from this same affliction, is that you can lose hours and hours of your life just looking at it. Now, this is interesting because it's not some drop-dead gorgeous coupe like an Aston Martin, and it's also not as overt in design for a hot hatch coupe thing like a Civic Type R, but I just find myself turning back to look at it all the time, or just standing here admiring it, because it's such an interesting looking thing, and that's so refreshing for a hot hatch coupe thing. However, it's not all good news for the design. There is an issue, but we'll cover that when we talk about practicality a little bit later in the video. Now, fun fact about the C30, did you know that it shares pretty much the same platform as a whole host of other Volvo models, and it also shares loads of components with the Ford Focus and the Mazda 3. That's because Ford actually owned Volvo when this thing was being developed and manufactured, and they also owned a pretty substantial chunk of Mazda at the same time as well. They don't anymore, but also, for some unknown and ridiculous reason, internationally, Volvo offered no less than 15 different engine options for the C30, plus a couple of full EVs too. Locally, we had to make do with 3 petrols and 4 diesels, but even then, like, this thing was never going to be a big seller, so Volvo, why did we need so many different engine options? Also, while we're on engines, another fun fact, did you know that this 5-cylinder turbo found in the T5 models is pretty much the exact same engine that you'll find in the front of a Ford Focus XR5 Turbo, or ST if you're watching this internationally, and the Focus RS Mark II. Now, this whole incest approach to car manufacturing could mean good news for you if you need any spare parts. See, rather than paying some huge premium for genuine Volvo OEM parts, you could save yourself a small fortune by buying Mazda or Ford parts, which are the exact same part, they just come wrapped in different packaging. And speaking of saving money, My God, haven't these things depreciated on the used car market? At the very bottom end of the spectrum, pricing kicks off currently at around about $5,000 here in Australia. The most expensive ones we could find topped out at about $15,000. Now, to put that into perspective, a Mazda 3 MPS of the same year was actually asking around about $5,000 less than this was brand spanking new. But now they're asking around $2,000 to $5,000 more than these. But no matter what car you're looking at, if you're in the market for car finance, do yourself a favor and hit the Driver link down there. Driver is simply the easiest and fastest way to secure your car finance, and they'll compare different loan quotes from heaps of different lenders so you know you're going to get the best possible deal. Now look, obviously there is so much more to the C30 than just that, and if you do need all the specific details, and if you'd like all the common problems easy to refer to, hit the link below or go to ReDriven.com and check out the free C30 cheat sheet. It's going to answer all your questions. Let's get inside before it pisses down with rain. Okay, now what goes wrong with the interior? Well, the first big issue tends to revolve around the air conditioning or the entire HVAC system. Firstly, the compressor clutch packs can fail. Now, the telltale sign for this is you're driving around with the air conditioning on and over a few minutes it just stops blowing cold air, which is certainly not ideal in Australia's climate. The good news here, it's not too difficult or expensive to fix. Next up, condenser failures are becoming more common, but unlike the compressor clutch pack situation, these are far more involved and often more expensive to fix. Also, the actual heater core itself, it can leak. Unfortunately, it tends to leak onto the central electronic module. And as I'm sure you know, electricity and coolant or liquid generally don't mix. Actually, also on that central electronic module, it's located beneath the glove box. Now, plenty of owners have had issues where passengers have accidentally kicked it, and this can cause all sorts of electronic dramas. Worse still is that a new module with dealer programming can cost all of the thousands of dollars. Next up, and this one refers back to the sunroof leaks and the leaks from the top of the windscreen, obviously check all the carpets for any signs of dampness, but make sure you check under the front seats. The problem here is when water finds its way into that area, it can play havoc with electronics, especially your airbag connectors. And remember, obviously, Volvo prioritizes safety, so how about we not let that reputation slip by letting your airbag electronics corrode? Look, overall, when it comes to the interior electronics, when you're test driving one of these, push every single button, try every function, especially with the air conditioning, make sure it all works. Next up, on C30s that have the little screen that rises out of the dash, that whole functionality can completely fail. Also, the door lock mechanisms, they've probably seen better days as well. Now, these door lock repairs, they need to be done ASAP because plenty of owners mention that if you don't sort them out straight away, yeah, you can get either locked in or outside of the car. And then there are the interior trim related complaints and issues. For example, plenty of owners recommended not buying any cars fitted with the white and black leather interiors because apparently they're just not resilient at all and they can look bloody horrible. Even with this particular car, I've got to say, like the leather, it is really soft, but the problem with the really soft leather is that on the driver's seat, as you can see here, it's starting to crack and fall apart a little bit. In saying that, plenty of owners mentioned that if these things are fastidiously maintained from new, the interiors are quite resilient. But if not, yeah, they can look a bit tired and shabby. Also, with the age of these and the distance many of these have covered, you're going to have to expect things like rattly interiors, door cards squeaking. A lot of these plastics, even in this car, the plastics can get really brittle, and as the car vibrates, they crack and that eventually rattles. Even weird squeaks and just mysterious sounds tend to pop up. But unfortunately, plenty of owners mention that just finding these squeaks and rattles and weird noises and trying to fix them can be a total headache. But look, enough bad news for now. Let's focus on some positives and let's talk about this interior design. Like the exterior, I just love how Scandinavian it all is. It's just unique and cool to look at. I especially love the whole floating center stack here. And fun fact about this, one of the finish options was inspired by Swedish Hagstrom guitars, and they were made famous in the 1950s by a little known artist called Elvis Presley. Although I've got a bit of an issue, and it's some of the ergonomics. I don't know what it is. As far as using the interior, as far as getting your hand onto controls and stuff, that all makes sense. But I can't seem to get comfortable. I wish the seat just was a little bit lower. And for an R design and a Polestar tuned R design, I think the seat should be more like a Recaro style seat. I just wish it was wrapping around me and holding me tightly a bit more than this. Really comfortable seats, really nice place to sit. But for me, I just wish I could get a bit lower and hunkered down. Now, as far as actually using the interior in terms of practicality, here's a highlight. You know, it has a glove box. That's not exciting. It is because it is so deep. I'm trying to think of a deeper glove box and I don't think I've ever found one. That is outrageous how deep that is. You've got a spot really well designed for your phone behind the waterfall style center stack there. You've got a spot for, I reckon, a quarter of a Stadler eraser. You've got under the little squeaky trapdoor, 2 cup holders here. They've got little flappy finger things to hold the small pretentious coffees like a macchiato. You've got a spot perfectly sized for CDs here. What does Liam listen to? Of course he does. He listens to Daft Punk because he's an absolute legend. Also, CDs are going to make a comeback. Mark my words. Obviously you've got door bins there and grab handles here. Nowhere for sunglasses there, no storage there, nothing under the seats. Not too bad for practicality up front. And then when it comes to using the interior in terms of tech and features and equipment, look, obviously these things are way too old to come with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Even the Bluetooth is getting really, really old, and it was only available from the 2010 models onwards, so don't expect it to be the most reliable Bluetooth connection. The good news, however, there are plenty of kits to fit Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with aftermarket gear. You can have them replace the screen that pops up, or you can replace this section. Heaps of options there. Also, when you update to Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, it also means you can fit reverse or 360-degree cameras and front and rear parking sensors and as much modern tech as you want. However, if the C30 you're looking at is fitted with the high-performance audio system, these things are so ridiculously integrated into the car, actually upgrading it, according to the owners, can be a complete nightmare. It can be done, but oh my God, what a pain in the ass. Also, on top of all the standard features, Volvo bundled the C30's various options into 3 different packages. However, what these even come with can vary depending on the trim spec of the car. And when it comes to the various trim specs, it's almost like Volvo went, hey, you know what's going to really attract customers? Just confusing them completely. Across the range, there have been 10 different trim specs, each with a choice of 3 or 4 option packs and potentially 3 to 4 different engine configurations. And they wonder why they didn't sell many. All of that choice is just far too confronting. But look, again, anyway, if you need all the specific details, ReDriven.com, it's all on the free cheat sheet. It's time for another Wipertech challenge. Will it wipe today's victim? A pretentious coffee. Now, before we see how they wipe, remember, Wipertech wiper blades are so easy to fit. You can order them easily online, and if you do order them via that link, you're gonna get 15% off and free express shipping. Let's wipe this. Okay, pretentious coffee, 3/4 full double ristretto on oat milk. Here we go. Go for it. Oh, it's a breeze. Yeah, easy. Walk in the park. So if these things can handle that, surely they're going to handle anything that you can throw at them. Get yourself a set today. Now, as a thank you present for lending us his car, Liam, mate, you're going home with a set of these bad boys for free. And if you'd like a set for free, all you've got to do is lend us your car, and if we feature it on ReDriven, you're going to get a set for free. Just message us on the socials or down in the comments. Now, in the back seat, I'm exactly 13 centimeters taller than C30 PO. This is in my driving position. And it's a mixture here. The seat itself is super comfy, especially the backrest, really comfortable. But then my knees are squished up against the back of the seat. I'm actually losing feeling in my right knee at the moment. Feet are all in weird angles. The roof, because of its beautiful design outside, just makes you feel really claustrophobic in here. From hips up, pretty comfy. Hips down, not at all. As far as features and practicality in the back seat, you've got a power outlet down there, you've got some storage cubby holes here, and you've got easy access to the massive storage cubby hole in the back because there is no middle rear seat. Now in the boot, remember at the start of the video where I said there might be an issue with the exterior design and it comes to practicality? We'll get to it eventually. This is what I'm talking about. For a hatchback, this opening aperture is very, very much on the small side. Although there's 2 ways of looking at this. If you classify this as a sporty coupe, this isn't too bad, but as a hatchback, this is way too small. Don't get me wrong, it's great that they've paid such a wonderful homage to the Volvo P1800 ES with this whole design, but just aperture's too small. And then once you're actually inside the boot, again, it's pretty small back here. This is smaller than a Fiesta ST boot. With the seats down, which really, that's how they should be because no one's going to sit in the back of it. With the seats down, not too bad for practicality back here. But there might be another issue back here. Plenty of owners mentioned that to get the rear parcel shelf to actually operate, it requires Bear Grylls levels of tent assembly. Speaking of operating, what are the common issues when it comes to driving it? Well, the first thing you need to do is feel for any vagueness in the steering or check if the car almost wants to wander all over the road a little bit. See, according to those in the know, plenty of the suspension components can wear prematurely. And what happens is it makes the steering and the ride and handling feel like you're driving a wet sponge. And this is why it is absolutely critical that you get a pre-purchase inspection carried out before you buy the thing, just to check out what might be lurking beneath. Also, get yourself a vehicle history check while you're at it, because that'll tell you if there's any money owing on the car or if it's been written off, anything like that. To get one of those, hit the link below or go to ReDriven.com and get one there. Now, another complaint about the driving, and it refers to something I've mentioned earlier, just interior rattles. Although in saying that, in this particular car, not many. There is a rattle coming from my left shoulder area, not my left shoulder, behind me in the car. But overall, honestly, I was expecting way more rattles and weird noises in this, but no, it's pretty good. But you know what? Besides the potentially worn out suspension and maybe some of the brittle plastics, that's about it for common complaints and issues. So how about we focus on the positives? Now, this is an R design, but you know what? It's actually quite a special one. See, not only is this thing fitted with a whole bunch of go fast bits and, let's say, aesthetic enhancements to emphasize its R designedness, but this is a Polestar edition, or it's got the Polestar tuning package on it. So therefore, it is the most powerful of all of the C30s. And in an ideal world, I'd be able to show you just how powerful it is, but it's pouring with rain today. We're on Sydney streets, so I'm afraid that's not going to happen. But let's say hypothetically I have kind of given it the beans occasionally. It is quick. It is a very, very quick car. To give you an idea of how quick this thing is, it has a near identical power to weight ratio as the Mazda 3 MPS, or Mazda Speed 3 if you're watching this from the US. But the thing is, this is lighter, it's shorter, it's wider, and it's lower. So it feels more agile and even more energetic than the Mazda. Also, interestingly, this thing torque steers less than the Mazda, and that is interesting because the Mazda has a limited slip front diff. This thing doesn't, but when you get up it for the rent, yeah, no torque steer. That's quick, it's quick, very quick. Now, just back to the whole issue with rattles and weird noises thing, there's a really easy way to fix that, and that's just by flexing your right foot and listening to that 5-cylinder turbo engine. I do wish it was a bit louder inside the cabin. I'm sure it sounds amazing outside, but 5-cylinder engines, they just sound fantastic. Also, in terms of performance, it feels sort of old school turbo, like there's a bit of lag there, but I love that because it gives you a moment just to go, oh, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to risk my license? But the thing I love most about this engine is that it's got this beautiful muscular torque curve right in the part of the rev range that you use all of the time. Yeah, you can have cars that rev their hearts out, and to get the best out of them, you do have to rev them into the red line, but that's just antisocial and kind of annoying because you've got to change gears all the time to get the power out. But with this, you've just always got this, as I said, that muscular torque curve, so it's just fun to zip in and out of traffic and out of roundabouts. I love this engine. Also, it might be a good thing that you don't have to always be changing down gears to get the best out of the engine, because this shifter, it's a little disappointing. It's a little bit vague. I was hoping for it to be a little bit more Mazda MX-5 or Honda S2000 slick and notchy. It's just, it feels a bit consumer for a performance car. Now, a few owners mentioned to me that they felt that maybe the ride was a bit too firm for an everyday kind of car. I don't know. I think the ride's actually really compliant. It does feel super confident and planted all the time, and on really rough roads, maybe the suspension could do with a bit of a refresh, but I'm actually really impressed. Ride quality and handling, excellent. If you push too hard, yeah, it might understeer a little bit, but that's to be expected, isn't it? And then back to like real world stuff, because there's so much glass in here and the car is just compact in size, it's so easy to deal with in traffic. If you're trying to find like a reverse park and the spot's really small, it's a breeze because it fits. For daily duties, it's lovely. It's lovely to use. Look, overall, it does feel way more mature and grown up than something like a Fiesta ST, but at the same time, it has so much more charm and character and just sense of fun than something like a Volkswagen Golf GTI. But the thing is it more reliable than a Golf GTI? What are the common mechanical issues we need to be on the lookout for with the C30? I can't tell you, I'm sorry, because I'm not a qualified mechanic. But you know who is? It's Jim.
Now, I know Adam alluded to this, but I'll just say this, internationally, there are way too many engine and transmission combinations here to cover, so today we're just going to stick to the Australian variants. Now I'm going to start with the 5-cylinder petrol, and I'm going to group the non-turbo and the turbo together because they do share a lot of the same problems. Now the most common problem we see, now I actually learned some Swedish for this because I thought it might be more authentic. See if I get this right. The numero uno problema, is the PCV valve. That's this part here. The problem here is this diaphragm splits and allows unmetered air and causes an air leak and makes a horrible sucking sound, and you can diagnose it by just popping out the dipstick and the noise stops. Now, you can spend an absolute fortune and buy the whole oil filter housing, and it's quite difficult to change, you know, there's a few hours work there, or you can just do yourself a favour, get online and buy the diaphragm, which is less than 20 bucks, just change this bit and that will fix the problem. They can also suffer from oil consumption. It's a pretty common problem, so keep an eye on that. Now oil leaks, often they leak from the camshaft oil seal at the front, and also at the back of the head there's some blank off plates there. They leak oil occasionally there too. Now the ones at the back, the blank off plates, they're pretty easy to change, but the actual camshaft seals, if they leak, well, you've got to do the whole timing belt. And if they do leak, you've obviously got to do the timing belt anyway, and it is due every 150,000 Ks or 10 years, but if you've got an oil leak in there, you've definitely got to do it sooner. Coolant leaks on these are a pretty common problem too. The expansion tank or the cooling system expansion tank, that can just split open and leak. The cap can often leak as well. Now, a big problem is the heater hoses. They're at the back of the engine. They're all plastic fittings and they get very brittle with age and they can just spontaneously break. If you look at them and they're slightly discoloured, like a brownie colour, you need to change them out straight away. The thermostat housing on these is pretty fragile and is a pretty common problem. Now, if you have any of these leaks and you're unlucky enough to have an overheating event, it can be quite problematic because these things are very sensitive to overheating and they often blow head gaskets after an overheating event. They also suffer from cracked blocks. Now that can come from an overheating event, but more often than not that comes from when they've been tuned and people are leaning on them too hard, the bore or the cylinder line actually cracks, and that presents just like a blown head gasket. The difference there is if that cracks, you're up for a whole new engine. If you're modifying it and you lean on it too hard, you're asking for trouble, so don't be a dickhead. Now the diesels in these, they are all different, but I'm going to group them together because they do share a lot of problems. The biggest one being choked up inlets. Now on the 5-cylinder, that inlet manifold is part of the valve cover gasket. So if that chokes up, it's quite a job to take the whole thing off and clean it. If you don't clean it, what can happen, the swirl pot or the variable intake manifold runners, they get a lot of carbon around them, and then that actually causes the actuator to fail as well, and it turns into an even more expensive job. Pretty common problem. They are prone to split intake and turbo pipes, and they're also very prone to clogged up map sensors. Now typically if you have either of those problems and you leave it, you'll end up with DPF issues as well, so just keep a good eye on those. The AC compressor on these, it's a fairly common problem, and one thing you need to keep an eye on, and this is more so for the 5-cylinder diesels, keep an eye on your harmonic balancer, because I've seen these things fail, and when they fail they shred up the drive belt on the front of the engine, and that in turn can take out the timing belt cover, and that in turn can take out the timing belt, and then you've got a catastrophic engine failure on your hands. So just keep a good eye on your harmonic balancer, make sure it's running true and straight and the belt is nicely aligned. Now transmissions in these, in some regions they got that god-awful forward power shift transmission. If you're one of the unlucky ones here, look, fingers crossed you never have a problem, but pretty much if you can get that car out of your life, that's probably a good thing. And if you're looking to buy one, well, just don't. Now as far as the conventional autos go, they are an ASIN unit, and they're actually in a lot of front wheel drive configurations in a lot of manufacturers. They're actually pretty good if you service it occasionally. You shouldn't have too many problems. They can have some valve body and solenoid issues, and if you lean on them too hard they can slip a bit and have some clutch burning issues as well. Servicing here is the key, and don't tune it too hard such that it slips and kills it. The manuals, they're pretty good. There's not many of them around, and that is the preference for tuners obviously, but yeah, if they're treated right and serviced and not lent on too hard, they're pretty good too. Now just on the tuning thing, the 5-cylinder turbo is very popular to tune. I say this all the time, if you're buying one, make sure the mods are done right. Even if they are done right, you can probably expect something to break. Better still, just don't mod it, really. And I say don't mod it because basically these create enough power for the chassis to handle. Any more power, they just become a torque steering wheel spinning nightmare. Now overall mechanically, I know that sounds like a lot of doom and gloom, but basically as far as Volvos go, yeah, these are actually one of the good ones.
Now look, I know after running through all of the common issues with these, it does give the impression that the C30 is just some ticking time bomb waiting to go off. But the thing is, for so many owners out there, including Liam that owns this car, that is simply not the case. In the 2 years that he's owned this, not a single drama. And the owner before him, same thing, no issues at all. And when reading through the owners groups and forums, there are clearly thousands of owners that have never and probably will never have an issue. However, and ignoring the performance C30s just for a moment, if you're in the market for a budget conscious and reliable small car, we wouldn't recommend buying any of the normal C30s. For the $5,000 to $10,000 they're asking, instead we'd be checking out Toyota Corolla or Yaris, Mazda 2 or 3, Honda Civic, even Suzuki Swift, because at this budget, the priorities need to be a larger support network, more affordable parts, and a stronger reputation for resilience and reliability. However, when it comes to the spicier C30s, the T5s, especially in R-Design trim, should you buy one of those? Okay, look, as long as you've found an example like Liam's here that has a completely flawless maintenance history, you're also pretty handy with a spanner like Liam, and you've maybe got, say, $5,000 tucked away in a just in case the C30 has a tantrum account, yeah, you should buy one. These things might be just one of the most underrated hot hatch coupe things in the market. Although, there is another criminally underrated hot hatch coupe thingy out there that you should check out. It also happens to be newer. It has a better reputation for reliability, and the parts and maintenance should be more affordable as well. It's this. But if you weren't to buy this or this, what would you buy instead? Let us know in the comments. See you next time.
Occasionally suffer from oil, what is the term? Oil consumption. I keep going to say oil constipation. That's not it.
Now, as a thank you present to the wonderful Liam that has lent us his car, what was that? The bird?